Okay, Fuji X-H2. This is my new Fuji X-H2. I have the Fuji 16 to 80 millimeter f4 lens. It's the lens sold as a kit with the X-H2, which ironically is a lens that they say is not optimal for the 40 megapixel sensor. But you know, it does just fine. You're just not going to get as much detail out of it as you would one of the newer lenses that's sharper and made for to resolve that extra resolution that the sensor has. But anyway, just real quick, I'm not an expert at video, so I'm just doing something simple here, straight out of the camera, and I'll upload it as is. And please check my photo galleries. That's, you know, primarily I'm a still shooter, and I do best at stills photos. So I have camera settings for the X-H2 right now. First of all, I'm using a Godox wireless mic. It's kind of a, you know, sort of similar to that Rode Video Go, whatever it is, the little Rode mic that looks like this. So it's a wireless mic that is plugged into the side of the camera. And by the way, you can flip the screen around without interfering with the microphone jack when it's plugged in. So you can like totally flip the screen around, and that's just fine. I'm using the Fuji app to control the start and stop of the video. I have the tally light turned on so I can see that it's actually recording. I can't do video streamed live to the phone like I would normally want to, so as I get further away I can see myself on the screen and see that I'm in focus or whatever, because that's the whole point of this video, is just a little autofocus testering video, and with face and eye detect turned on, continuous autofocus of course, and just to see that, you know, how well it does. I've got it set, the lens set to 50 millimeters, which is around 75 millimeter full frame equivalent, and f4, so you know, try to get the most separation as I can. So when I'm in focus and closer to the camera, the more background blur obviously behind me. What else? I have camera set to 4K 60p. I tried to do a video yesterday. I did do a video yesterday and uploaded it 4K 30p. It's the 4K HQ setting, which is 8K oversampled down to 4K, which should be a little better quality video. There is another example of that. If you look on my YouTube page, there's my channel. There's an example with the, you know, just shooting some grass swaying around in the breeze at sunset, and that was yesterday. So that one processed just fine, but the other video I uploaded was about 14 minutes. For some reason YouTube overnight, it was still processing, you know, it was only processed 1080p. So I just like, okay, forget that one, I'll do another one. And I don't know if you can hear this, there's airplanes flying by, so hopefully it won't be too loud. Anything else about the camera? Let's see, 4K 60p. I believe that's it. So the thing I was going to say about the app is you can't stream live to the app, you know, watch the live view and get 4K video. You can't record in 4K. The app and the camera together, it'll automatically dumb it down to like 1080 30p. That's like the max you can get when you're live streaming to the phone. So that's why I'm just using the phone with the Bluetooth trigger. It's called remote camera shooting mode. It's just a little button on off to trigger start and stop, either to take a photo or to do video. So that's what I'm doing right now. And let me start moving around. If you see me walking around, moving around like crazy, that's the whole point of this video, just a little autofocus test, and I think it's done really good from my testing so far, so I'm really happy with it. So it's supposed to adjust the exposure a little bit. It should brighten it probably a little bit when it's focused on my face, and when it's not, I would expect the exposure might come down a little bit if it's getting all the brightness in the background. But there should be plenty of stuff around me as a distraction for the camera if the face and eye detect is not going to work right, but I'm pretty sure it will. I'm in the shade, obviously. It's bright sun right now. I didn't want to do a bright sunny out in the middle of the sun with no ND filter and all that, because I'm just shooting 4K 60 aperture priority video and letting the camera pick the shutter speed at once. And I know that's not the proper way to do it, but I'm primarily just a still shooter. So if you want simple and easy video, this is kind of what I look for in a camera. Just can I do it simple and easy, straight out of the camera and without editing anything. Let me step out of the frame and it should refocus on something, and then back in. Then you should see it catch me and then the background blur out. So let me go back. I'm just trying to watch myself. I can't see exactly where I am because the screen gets smaller and smaller as I step away. But try to move around here and see if the camera reacquires me. It seems like, as far as I could tell, it's hard to tell too far away, but other people that I've practiced on with this camera, it looks like the face and eye detect really picks the face and the eyes up pretty far away. So I was pretty impressed with that. The autofocus tracking in stills mode seems to be really sticky and really good. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking about fast moving subjects that you want to track and shoot. I'm talking about placing the tracking box over an individual subject like a leaf or something. You know, if I'm taking a nature shot or something specific, put the tracking box over that and then just move the camera around to reframe it, and that works really well. So it reminded me, frankly, of the real-time autofocus tracking that Sony has. I experienced that in the Sony a6400 when I owned one of those for a while. But I got rid of that because mainly I just couldn't take the body style. I didn't really like that body style. It was really uncomfortable, you know, because it was so small and it's just not comfortable to use. And while that 16 to 50 kit lens on the a6400 was, you know, good enough and sharp enough, I didn't like the power zoom, just like I didn't like the power zoom on that the Fuji 15 to 30, I think it is, that I had on a XT30. But it was surprisingly sharp and really nice lens optically, in my opinion, that Fuji 15 to 30. I do plan on getting a better prime lens for this, so a prime lens. I don't have any right now. Primarily a Nikon Z7 II shooter. We've got a Nikon ZFC as just a playing around camera. So I love the looks of it and how small it is. And it has the same sensor from the Z50 D500, I believe, same sensor, Z30. But primarily using the Nikon Z7 II with a 24-120. The Z 24-120 Nikon lens, which is an absolutely wonderful lens, very sharp. I do have a comparison photo between the X-H2 with the 16-80 and the Z7 II with the 24-120. I tried to make the settings as equivalent as possible, so like the equivalent depth of field, so I think it was like 5.6 on the Fuji X-H2, the aperture, which is around 8.4, I think. And f8 on the Z7 II. Focal length was around 50 millimeters, if I remember right, as close as possible. 50 on the Z7 II and 50 millimeter equivalent on the X-H2. By the way, if you have a Nikon camera or a Sony and you're thinking, oh, I've got some XQD cards I can use because it's same size, you know, you can use a XQD card or a CF Express Type B in a Nikon Z7 or Z6, D850, other cameras like that, and I think some of the Sony cameras have a CF Express Type B card slot. You cannot use XQD cards in the Fuji X-H2 or X-H2S. It has a CF Express Type B slot and an SD slot, which the SD slot is UHS-2. XQD, physically it fits just like it would in the Z7, but I believe probably Fuji doesn't want to license that technology from Sony. I believe it's a Sony thing, XQD. So, you know, just one extra cost they don't need. So XQD cards are kind of getting harder to find and more expensive anyway. So you can buy a 128 gigabyte Pro grade. It's Pro grade brand. 128 gigabytes for $99 now, and that's more than you'll get for an XQD card. You know, you get more storage for less money. So better off buying XQDs or a CF Express Type B anyway. But if you already had several XQDs, then that's kind of a bummer because you can't use them in the X-H2. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of anything. Experience overall with the camera so far. I love the body style. I was never really one of those people that wanted the the shutter speed and ISO dial up on top, like in X-T4 cameras like that. I much prefer a bigger grip, like a Nikon mirrorless DSLR, not mirrorless DSLR, like a Nikon mirrorless camera like the Z7, or DSLR like the D750, and you know, the Canon equivalents and all that kind of stuff. I prefer a grip with just a normal mode dial on the top, a really nice display, which I love this display on the top of the Fuji, and you know, front and rear command dials. So I use my index finger to change my aperture, and then use the thumb to change exposure compensation. And fortunately, out of the box, that's how the X-H2 is set up. If you put it in aperture priority mode, the front dial is aperture control, and the rear dial is exposure compensation. Actually, as I say that, okay, I was just making sure that that I had the lens, the aperture ring set to A, because I have bumped that a few times. You know, I don't even really care about the aperture ring on the lens. I know a lot of people love using the ring on the lens, but for me, it makes it more cumbersome and slower, because depending on how you're holding the camera, you know, it just may interfere with how you normally want to hold the camera or need to hold the camera based on what you're shooting, the angle you're at, and the lens, the weight of everything. A lot easier for me to use front and rear command dials to adjust the exposure and aperture. Let's see, what else? Thinking about the camera. Think, MacGyver, think. Let's see. Yeah, it's built really well. I love how, and again, this is, I don't know why Nikon did this. One thing that drives me crazy about the Nikon G7, C7 II. You know, it's kind of like, did Panasonic do that? I can't remember who else did that. Where you had to take the battery door off and stick the battery grip. Now, I don't use the battery grip, but if I ever did want to buy one, I had one for my GH5, I think, way back when. But Nikon, for example, makes you take the battery grip off, or the battery door off, and then stick the battery grip up into where the battery would go, and then you only get 2 batteries extra. You know, so you have 2 batteries total. Whereas with the Fuji, it's just a little, it's kind of like the grip for the GH5, Panasonic GH5, where you just leave the battery in the camera. There's contacts on the bottom of the camera, take a little rubber boot off, and then you could screw the battery grip onto the bottom of the camera and end up with 3 batteries. So now you have 3 batteries total. And these batteries, the WP, was it, sorry if I'm saying this wrong, it's like the NPW235 or something like that. Kind of looks just like the battery that Nikon Z7 takes, or the 850, and et cetera, et cetera. But that battery lasts a pretty good long time. I mean, it's a really nice battery as far as capacity goes. So let me walk back this way a little bit. It is, what is today? October 1st. Actually, it's my son's birthday, 18. Had a lot of challenges last year with his health related to something that we were pretty much forced to get. You know, it was like the rest of the community. I'm not going to go into all that, but hospitalized for over a month because of that, and lost his large intestine. So I'm happy that he's with us and 18 and back to being pretty healthy. So anyway, October, leaves are starting to change. It's in the 60s right now. It's really beautiful, feels really nice. I'll be taking a trip down to Smoky Mountains, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, you know, Cherokee, North Carolina, go over into the mountains, Dollywood. If you've never been to Dollywood, don't make fun of it, because if you've never been there and you go, you'll realize it's like a beautiful amusement park dropped into the mountains, and trees all around. Like most of the time in the older part of the park, for sure, you're just walking around under the trees, and then they got all the buildings and rides kind of like mixed in with the trees. So really beautiful place. And they have a wonderful coal-fired steam train, and that's really good for photos. So I'll be getting all that, mountain photos, stream photos, probably some mossy rock photos in the stream, steam train, trails. All right, so I think that's probably enough of this back and forth and rambling on, but let me think if there's anything. I do have some test photos. I think I mentioned that between the Z7 II and this. Now, I know people get upset with comparisons, and you're trying to make one better than the other, but there's no question the Z7 II with the 24-120, the Z-mount lens, compared to the X-H2 with the 16-80, which is not as good of a lens optically as the Nikon version. The Nikon's going to have sharper images and more detail. The two disadvantages in that comparison between the X-H2 and the Nikon Z7 II in my test is that, first of all, I'm using Adobe Lightroom for the raw processing, and everybody knows, most people know, that the X-Trans files are just not handled as well in Adobe products. Capture One from Phase 1, that they do a better job with the raw conversion for the Fuji X-Trans files, and then so that's one disadvantage, why the images might be less detailed and less sharp. That's one reason. The other reason, just the 16-80 millimeter lens is not as good of a lens as the Nikon Z24-120. The Z24-120 on the Nikon is actually one of the pro line lenses that Nikon has, and this lens is 16-80 is not a pro line lens. So a better test would be if I get a prime lens, which I will by Christmas. Get a nice prime lens, and then maybe I can do another example shots between the Z7 and the X-H2. The Z7 is going to primarily be my main camera. I'll keep that for sure. I have all the lenses I want with it. 85 1.8, 35 1.8, 24-120 f4, and the 24-70 f4, which I don't really need or use right now. I just kept it because it came with a kit way back when, 2018, when I got the original Z7. So that's going to be my primary kit, and I'll be taking that with me to Europe next year. Italy and Spain, I think it is. There'll be a cruise, I think, in springtime. So I might, for the cruise, I might take my Fuji. And then the Fuji is going to be, I would like to keep this long term because I love the body, love how the camera handles, and I know Fuji always tweaks everything with the firmware. There's going to be a lot of firmware updates coming for it to make it even better, and it's already a great camera as is. Plenty of resolution. I just need a better lens, first of all, for any type of photo where I care about the detail. Now, having said that about the Nikon and the Fuji, if you're looking at the images at a normal distance, or like it's a print and you're looking at it at normal distance, and you're not pixel peeping and zooming at 100% to look at all the detail and sharpness, I doubt you would ever really even notice the difference between the Fuji and the Nikon. And I am kind of, revisiting my sharpening settings for the Fuji X-Trans files. That's the other thing, X-Trans. I'll talk about that here in just a second, and I promise I'll stop rambling. So I'm working on my sharpening settings just to kind of maximize my sharpening for the Fuji files versus the Nikon files, and just make sure I'm doing it as best I can to get the Fuji files. Get all the leaves coming on me. These are leaves from the black locust tree next to me. Hopefully you can see that. There's some shagbark hickory trees over here to my left, some leaves coming off of that, and some black walnut trees. Those are shedding leaves pretty well right now. But the maples and the oaks not really losing their leaves much right now. Mostly just the locust trees, the hickory, not hickory, yeah, some of the hickory leaves coming off. Locust, black walnut, and some of the hickory, but this is a ash tree right now. It's not really losing much. And those are actually some hickory, no, black walnut growing up around that old corn crib there. I guess that's what that is. X-Trans is what I was going to say before I got distracted by the leaves. Honestly, I wish Fuji would stop using the X-Trans. It'd make my life and everybody else's life much easier in Adobe products. I'm not going to switch. I've been using Adobe Lightroom since version 1. It just makes no sense for me to switch. I know it really well. It's super fast and easy for me to use. I have some presets set up, to apply to the, different cameras when I import files, and, it's a good product and I like it. So I'm not going to switch to Capture One or anything else like that. But I wish they would just stop using X-Trans in the APS-C cameras, because they didn't use it in their XA line, you know, the cheaper X-mount cameras, like the XA1 or whatever. The original X100 didn't have X-Trans. Their GFX, you know, their medium format cameras don't have X-Trans. So, in my opinion, I think it's just more of a marketing thing, something unique, and Fuji can say, look, we've got the X-Trans that help with color and resolution, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, in my case, it's not helping with resolution. It's hurting me, because the raw files in Adobe, you know, you can blame Adobe or blame Fuji, whoever you want to blame, but I think it just, everything would be sharper and more detailed and better if I just had a normal bare type layout on the sensor rather than that X-Trans layout that they have. I know that's really polarizing. People get upset about that. I'm not here to get upset about anything. I don't care. You know, it's just camera and it's just pictures. You know, I shoot the way I shoot, and you shoot the way you shoot, and like what you like, the camera style. People get upset about the X-H version line doesn't have the top ISO dial and shutter speed dial, and then, you know, people get in arguments about that. That's ridiculous. I like this body style, and I'm glad they made it, because this is finally a body with the performance and the resolution that I really like. So that's one of the reasons why I bought this. And I sold off some older equipment that I'm not using, some Olympus stuff and lenses, and that's how I kind of funded this, and, you know, just about paid for all of it. So anyway, so there's that. I better wrap it up, because it's getting kind of long here. Let me just go in and out of camera here a few times. But hopefully some of my chit chat here is useful as far as the information I'm spouting off, and just me walking around like a wild man here. Hopefully that was useful too, to let you see the focusing. It is really snappy, and it recognized me really quick when I'm close enough to see the screen, but it's still kind of got a glare on it from the light. But I can see that it's picking me up really well. Oh, the other thing I was going to say about the audio, if you like this audio, again, this is the audio, the MoveLink from Godox. Godox MoveLink, I think is what they call it. I don't have the audio boosted at all. It's like 0 dB on this, the microphone, and it's 0 dB also in the camera. I haven't changed any of the audio settings in the camera. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, like the wind filter, that's turned off. 0 dB for the audio level in the camera. So I think this turns out to be a really nice level. On my Nikon, I have to turn this up like to +6, and then adjust my manually adjust my audio in the Nikon Z7 to like 13 out of 20, I think is what or maybe like, no, maybe around 9, but no tweaking at all in this, so that worked out really well. So I'll probably use this camera for video from now on, most likely. I do love the video from the Nikon Z7 too, but from what I've seen so far from this X-H2, I really love it. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned it, I'm using the Astia profile film simulation. So Astia, or they also call it soft. Thing I noticed about the Astia film simulation, it kind of warms things up a little bit. You know, it kind of gives a warmer tone to the image, and slightly more colorful than Provia. And I believe I also have the sharpening set to +1 in the camera. All right, with that, I'm going to stop, and hopefully this video will make it past all the processing in YouTube, because the last one, I'll go back and check again, but the last time I looked, it's been there about a day and it's still stuck. And I even uploaded it again, you know, a second time, and still stuck at like 1080. So, all right, thanks for watching, and again, please visit my website. I've got lots of photos from other cameras, tons of vacation photos from all kinds of different places, like cruises, Yellowstone, Yosemite, different national parks, all kinds of places, and a lot of different photos from different cameras. And I'll be loading up my X-H2 gallery as soon as I get out and take pictures. I might head out to the art museum tomorrow and get some shots over there. That'll be a good test, and get some more samples for the gallery. But until then, until my trip to the Smokies, be pictures from around here, you know, leaves and foliage, nature stuff, and whatever miscellaneous mechanical things I could find this interesting. All right, well, thanks for watching.